Welcome back to the channel, my friends, and today we are going to be going through what are some of the very best marches right now in Rise of Kingdoms, including the best field marches and the best swarming marches. Now, if you guys do enjoy content like this, I would like to invite you guys to join the Discord, which is in the description below. Now, with that said, guys, let's get into the video so we can discuss what are some of the best marches right now for you guys to consider using. Now, for the first setup here, as you can see, I have made a selection for what is the very best 4 marches that you can use right now. Now, for the number 1, we have a Ragnar Scipio. This is your first infantry march. The reason why I have included this is because it is doing a lot of AoE damage. So the Ragnar and the Scipio, they have a very nice synergy there. They are both dealing skill damage that is also AoE. Now, the more AoE that you're dealing on the field, that is going to affect multiple targets on the map. So this is a good choice for the 4 march configuration. Now, the second one here that I have included is the Zug and Hermann. Now, you may have heard a lot of people discuss this march, and that is because it is extremely powerful. Again, both of these commanders are dealing AoE damage. Not to mention, the Hermann is doing a poison effect on all targets that are hit by that AoE. Now, what this poison effect is going to be doing, every target that is hit by the poison is going to take additional skill damage from all sources. So, for example, we just mentioned the Ragnar and the Scipio. That is dealing skill damage. Now, if it is attacking the same target that has been inflicted by that poison, is going to take additional damage. Now, speaking of more skill damage commanders, moving on to number 3, we have our first cavalry in the mix, and that is none other than the Huo with the brand new King Arthur. Now, keeping in mind, having the King Arthur as the secondary commander means that this will be a skill damage based combination. So far for all 3 of these marches, you will probably want to be using the wedge formation. This configuration is going to make the absolute most benefit out of your debuffs from Hermann. Now, as for number 4, we are going to bring in our first buffing march, and that is with the brand new Philip paired with Liuchi. Now, the reason why I have included Philip paired with Liuchi over some of the other options that have been popular in recent months in the game is because this march is going to be enhancing Philip's active skill, will be enhancing Liuchi's damage by up to 40%. Now, that is quite significant, and it works very well with the smite damage, so it has a good synergy there. Now, this march is also going to be increasing your other marches damage by up to 20%. So this is really what I would recommend to use right now with 4 marches. If I was only using 4 marches, this is exactly what you would see me use. Now, moving on to 5 marches. This is for guys who have managed to create 5 legendary equipment sets in the game, and you have the commanders to use as well. Now, this is going to look very similar to the 4 march configuration. Now, simply we have added in the classic Nevsky and Joan. Now, this march has been absolutely killing it for many years now in Rise of Kingdoms, and it is not something that I would take away. Now, what this march is also doing, guys, it is doing more skill damage. So again, as we talked earlier about the Hermann, now all of your marches are going to be benefiting even further. Not to mention, Joan's skill is also providing rage benefits for your team. So you are going to be getting that extra buff now as well. Now, this is looking like the best 5 march configuration, in my opinion, right now in early 2025. Now, let's take a look at what the ideal 7 march configuration is right now. This is for those max deck players who want to be getting the absolute maximum benefit out of your gameplay. If you're about to enter Kingsland and you have max tech plus 7 sets of equipment and the commanders, this is exactly what I would be telling you guys to use right now. So number 1, we have the Ragnar Scipio. Again, that is that AoE damage with the skill damage. Now, for the number 2 march, you may have noticed there are some slight changes now. We have, in fact, taken away Philip from Liucci, and now we have introduced the William Wallace and the Liucci pairing. Now, both of these commanders are dealing smite damage. Now, also with William Wallace, he is going to be doing a rage reduction on your enemy targets. So this is also something that is very good to add into the mix as well. Not to mention, William Wallace will be providing shields for the rest of your marchers and allies. Now, again, you can see that we have decided to keep the Zug and Herman because this is simply one of the best marches in the game right now, so that is going to be unchanged. As for the fourth march here, you can see that we have introduced the second archer march, and that is going to be the Ashurbanipal and Nebu together. Now, what these two marches are doing, they're doing a lot of AoE skill damage, so you basically want to be using as much AoE damage as you can to bring to the field, meaning that additional targets are going to be hit by that damage on the map. Now, for the fifth march, this is unchanged again. We are keeping the Huo with Arthur because this is looking like probably one of the top 3 marches right now in the game. And of course, we have the Nevsky and Joan as well, the classic cavalry combination. Now, as for the 7th march, this is where things have changed a little bit. Going back to Philip, we had him previously with Liucci. Now that we have taken that out of that configuration, we are going to be bringing in Shajar. Now, if you have watched one of my recent videos, you would have heard me talk about how good this pairing is and why it works so well. Now, just to rehash some of the reasons why this pairing is so good right now, okay? Not only is Philip providing that extra damage for all of your marches, but Shajar is also increasing that normal damage by up to 20%, which is going to be affecting your smite damage commanders. That is going to be your William Wallace and your Liucci. Now that we have looked at the top 7 marches right now, this is the generic build if you are using 7 marches. Now, we are going to talk about what are some of the changes that you could possibly do here. This is using the 2-2-2-1 configuration. Now, what that basically means is you are using 2 cavalry, 2 archers, and 2 infantry, as well as 1 leadership commander. Now, we're going to talk about what are some of the things that we can do to switch that up. Now, looking at this particular lineup, what we have done is we have removed one of the archer marches. Yep, that is right. We have removed the Ashurbanipal and the Nebu. Now, the reason why, you may ask, why have we removed this particular march? To mess up that sweet spot of the 2-2-2 configuration. Now, the reason why, this is coming from personal experience, guys. It may be a little bit different for some of you, but for me, I just played a KVK and I was using the Ashurbanipal march. Now, in the beginning, I was using Ashurbanipal YSG, and then I progressed over to the Ashurbanipal Nebu. Now, that is a decent march. It is dealing that AoE damage like we spoke about. The thing is, when you're using 7 marches, okay, there is usually one march that is a little bit slower than the rest. And that one march is generally the last one to hit the target and the last one to leave that target as well. Now, when that is the case, that one march seems to do a lot worse than the rest. Generally, because that march is so slow, it is going to get targeted a lot more. And the damage that you're dealing from those active skills, because it is getting to the target later than desired, those active skills won't be going as much as you would want them to. So simply because of that reason, I have decided to remove that second archer march, and instead now we are going to be introducing a 3rd cavalry march. So for the first 3 marches, this is going to be unchanged. Now let's talk about what are the changes here. So for the 1st cavalry march, we are going to be using the Delta formation, and we are going to use the King Arthur as the primary commander with Joan of Arc. If you're not sure about this combination, let me assure you that this is very good as long as you have a good Delta formation. So again, this is the ideal setup that you would be using right now if you have these formations and the equipment available. So we know that this is a very good march, the King Arthur with Joan. This is confirmed, guys. I have seen it with my own eyes. I have played with this march and it is very good. Now, moving on to the 2nd cavalry march, we are going to be using the Huo with the Belisarius Prime. Now, this is something that I have been using for the last year or so. It is a very good march as well. Now, when you are hitting the target with the Belisarius, that target is going to be taking up to 12% extra damage from all sources. So this is particularly useful when you have up to 7 marches. This means that you are going to get the maximum benefit out of Belisarius' skill. Now, as for the 6th march, we are going to be using the Nevsky with William. Now, William has some very good skills for the open field, including extra range for your teammates and your own troops as well. Now, there has been a lot of debate in recent months about whether you should use Belisarius Prime or William. Now, with this particular configuration, we're going to be able to use both of them. So this is looking like the absolute perfect mix for me right now. And in fact, guys, I would actually be using this 7-march configuration over the first one that we had just discussed. Now, if you're wondering if I'm just a cav lover, guys, okay, keep in mind, generally, I would say that I am actually an archer main player. I have better archer gear and better archer armaments on any other set in the game. So you know that if I am telling you guys that you should be using 3 cavalry right now, and I'm also benching that 2nd archer march, you know that this must be legit, guys. I'm not making this up. You definitely want to consider using this if you have these commanders and the equipment right now. And of course, the 7th march, this is kind of where you are keeping an archer march. This is going to be your Philip with the Shajar. As discussed earlier, this is going to be bringing you a lot of buffs, not to mention now your King Arthur, who is using that Delta formation, will also be enhanced by the Shajar. Now, guys, we do also have one more additional configuration, and that is going to also include a siege march. Now, this would not be a video guide if I didn't include the siege, because siege definitely deserves to be part of this list. Now, let me tell you guys why. Okay, I did invest in siege a couple of KVKs ago. I made a full-on siege set, a legendary siege set, including the accessory. Now, my particular march has been Migrant with Gonzalo, and let me tell you, it has performed extremely well under certain circumstances. So with this particular lineup, what we have done is we have left out the Asher Banner Power March, and instead now we have replaced that with a Siege March. So this is slightly different to the configuration that I just showed you guys with 3 cav. Now, instead of using 3 cav, we are going to be using the Siege March. Now, the best siege march that you can be using right now is the Gaja with Gonzalo. Now, the reason for this, okay, guys, these 2 marches, they are using the smite damage. They have the best synergy in the game right now with the smite damage, where Gaja is enhancing the amount of damage output that Gonzalo is doing. Now, Gonzalo, who is the secondary commander, this is where it gets absolutely insane, guys. Okay, he is dealing AoE damage on the map from a range distance. So if you can be smart about this march, that means that you can set this up in a strategical location and you can get absolutely astronomical amounts of kill points using this march. Now, there are obviously some cons with this march as well, meaning that this is a less mobile march. So if the type of fighting that you are going to be doing is going to be moving from A to B a lot, okay, that means that this march will be at a disadvantage. That is why I have recommended some of the other configurations for you guys as well. This is a very situational march. Now, I understand not everyone is going to be able to invest in all of these commanders, but I am providing this video to you guys so that you guys can decide then what is going to work best for you. Now, some of the other areas where this march is going to really shine, guys, is also when you're fighting in altar battles. Now, basically now, whenever we have an altar battle in my KVK, I pretty much just only use siege because it's so good. And also Gaja is going to be doing that healing. That is something to also keep in mind, guys. When the rest of your marches die, this siege march is probably still going to be standing and generating a lot of kill points. Now, even though we see some lower end accounts that are using the siege, let me tell you, it is not something that should be underestimated if you are a big player in the game. Using 7 marches, this can be extremely beneficial. Now, moving on to the final list that we have here. This is going to be for the top 7 best swarming marches that you can use right now. This is looking quite a bit different to the open field setup, and that is because we don't really care right now about the AoE damage. So there are going to be certain factors that have changed now because we want to be focusing on commanders that are going to be doing a lot of debuffs to that garrison that you are going to be swarming, and also enhancing the amount of damage that you can deal as a march as well. So let's talk about what are the marches here that I would be using. If I could use anything right now, this is exactly what you would see me using. Number one, we have the Herman and Tommy configuration. Now, these two marches are both dealing the poison damage. Now, we did speak about this a little bit earlier on. Now, instead of just using the Herman poison, who is making that target take additional skill damage from all sources, you are going to get extra poison stacks from the Tamiris as well. These two marches together are absolutely insane when using against a garrison. Now, again, for the second march here, we have the Shajar primary paired with Boudica. Now, the reason that we have Shajar as the primary for this particular instance is because when she is the primary commander, she is going to be dealing up to 2,800 damage factor, and that is a lot of damage to be taken into account when fighting a garrison. Also, the Boudica here will be making the target take an extra 30% skill damage as well. So this is going to stack nicely with those poison stacks from the first Herman and Tamiris march. Now, moving into the infantry marches for the swarm lineup, we are going to be using none other than the Guan and Sargon. You may be asking, why are we using these old commanders? Okay, there is a reason why Guan has lasted in the meta for so long, and that is because of his silence ability. This is extremely powerful when fighting a garrison. So what this means, that garrison is going to be unable to use their active skills. Now, garrison commanders generally have very powerful active skills, and when you are disabling that for a duration, that is going to seriously weaken the garrison to allow the rest of your marchers who are swarming, and potentially a rally as well, to deal a lot of damage. Now, the Sargon as well, again, we are talking about commanders who are going to be doing debuffs on the garrison. This is also going to make that garrison take additional skill damage because of the Ord effect, which can stack up to 10 times. Not to mention Sargon's active skill, which is going to be dealing a guaranteed 2,500 damage factor. Now, this is a lot of damage when calculating against a garrison. As for the second infantry march here, we are going to be using a slightly different configuration, which is going to be the William Wallace paired with Scipio Prime. Now, the William Wallace is dealing a lot of smite damage here, as well as enhancing the infantry abilities from Scipio Prime. Now, with Scipio Prime, again, I know I said earlier that the AoE damage is less important when hitting a garrison, and that is definitely true. However, with his active skill, he is also making that garrison lose 30% health, which is quite significant. That means that this garrison is going to be weakened to allow the rest of your marchers to deal even further damage. Now, moving into the cavalry here for the swarming marchers, this is possibly the number one best march to bring to a swarm, and that is going to be the Huo paired with Belisarius Prime. Now, as mentioned, the Belisarius Prime is going to make that target take up to 12% additional damage from all sources. As long as there are 5 or more targets hitting that garrison, that damage will be at the maximum capacity, which is 12%. Not to mention the Huo Cubing is dealing 2,800 damage factor, which is a lot of damage as well, guys. When you calculate up to all of these high damage factors that you're dealing to the garrison, this garrison is going to be in serious trouble when you bring these marches. Now, as for the next cavalry march here that we are going to be using for the swarming on the enemy garrisons, that is going to be the Nevsky paired with Minamoto. Now, I know this may seem a little strange, guys, because the Nevsky and Joan has been so good, but now we are talking about swarming, and the Joan build isn't really built for swarming a garrison. However, the Minamoto is dealing the single target damage, meaning that that damage is going to be hitting only the garrison. Okay, not to mention his museum relic is giving him an extra 30% attack and 30% defense, which is quite significant, guys. Now, what we are really interested in here with the Minamoto build is his 4th skill. What this is doing, you have a 10% chance that that target, which is the enemy garrison, is going to take 30% extra damage from all sources. So basically, this is going to work very similarly to the Belisarius Prime. Now, Remember guys, the whole point about bringing these Soaring Marches is they are going to be doing a lot of debuffs onto the enemy garrison. Now, as for the final march here, we are going to be using the Philip with Liuchi. As mentioned earlier, that means that the rest of your marches will be getting up to 20% extra damage from Philip's active skill, as well as Liuchi dealing that extra smite damage. Not to mention, Liuchi's 4th skill is going to be making the enemy garrison deal 10% less damage. That means that the rest of your marches will take 10% less damage for 10 seconds. Again, guys, basically the aim of this video is just to provide you guys with some more information on what some of the best marches are to use right now. It is definitely not something that you have to go and do. There are definitely a lot of other good options that you can be using in the game. I'm just going to provide this information and you guys can use it however you please. So with that said, guys, I definitely hope that you did enjoy this video, and please consider joining the Discord. As mentioned, that is going to be in the description below. So I hope that you guys will join that. And also, please feel free to comment on this video. Let me know what some of the pairings you guys are going to be using. Let me know if there are other marches that you think I missed and that would be worth mentioning maybe in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I wish you all a very good day, and I will see you guys in the next video or on the battlefield.